Hey, what's up? This is a two-part video on building a motorized three-wheel bicycle. In this part here, I'll talk about the motor, the mods that I'm doing. From there, the second video, I'll show you the motor installed on the bike. Pretty simple stuff. At first, motors, I went with this 4.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. It's actually a snow series, they call it. 163 cc's, and the snow series, whatever name, doesn't really do anything for me except somewhat of a lower price. I got this place here, it's called the surpluscenter.com. They're back in Nebraska, somewhere like this, and you can follow their page here. When you're doing a motorized bike and stuff, it's about a horizontal shaft motor. You could start with the vertical shaft, but basically you need to change the connecting rod inside to have a splash stick, a little pin sticking out the back of it. And so when you tilt the motor sideways and run it, the oil pump no longer works. So you have to, that little rod, little piece sticking off the connecting rod, splashes the oil every time it makes a revolution, and it splashes to lubricate. It's a lot of the manufacturers do it. Even Honda does it with its small motors. But here, I'll show you these things. This is the motor here that I got. It's $100, $40 to ship it to California from Nebraska. Brand new, 7.5 foot-pounds of torque, 4.5 horsepower motor. Snowblower. Yeah, the thing about snowblowers, they say up to minus 20 degrees, the way it's set up with the stock carburetor and everything, it's going to start easy. But where I am in California, we don't see that much snow, except up in the hills a little bit. Anyways, trip on this. This is another motor that I was going to buy. Look at this one right here. This is a Chinese off-name LCT. Look how much that damn thing is. $49 for that motor. They have 92 in stock. They update that pretty much regularly. And look at all these Honda motors, 163s, same size as this one. I got a couple of those out in the back in my storage. A couple 163 Hondas. But I haven't seen a place this cheap on motors for a long time. And these are all brand new. They must pick them up from places that are making equipment. When they have extra motors and whatnot, they snap them up. This one here, this Honda is a 163. No, not that one. Let me show you another one. It's a $200 Honda. Okay, here's a 337. Okay, I remember this. Yeah, 550 will give you the electric start. Same motor here. Without electric starts 350. I'm going to try this motor next time. Almost every one of these goes counterclockwise when it's mounted on the bike. It's usually counterclockwise, but anyways, the first thing I did on mine was I yanked the stock carburetor off, I took the governor off, and I took the linkage off, and I'm going with this wannabe Mikuni 27 millimeter. This thing's brand new. Actually, I ran it for about a week on a 200cc Tecumseh motor. It ran really good. That's on a bicycle I have outside. Yeah, swap this out for this, because I'll show you one of the main things. You've got about 20 millimeters here of inlet on the Venturi. And basically, when your governor's connected, this thing runs at 1 RPM majority of the time. And if there's a load put on the motor, it steps up a little bit, then it goes back down. I don't want to just roll along on the bike at 1 RPM. So you can take these apart and put a cable on here and vary this, but these aren't all that great. These are wonderful with the slide, everything. They run great on these bikes. And here's my choke that slides out. So what I'm doing right now, I had to make my own custom intake manifold piece here. It's not the most beautiful. I'm welding on one 10 volt on a DC welder. It's an inverter type. Used 70-18 rod, made that bottom plate, and I port matched it for the intake on the head here. And basically, once it was all welded, it looked great. I painted it. When I installed it, little bits of air leaking right through the weld area. And so I basically mixed up 2 batches of JB Weld, really small, set this on here, poured it on there, kept it right on the spot. And then 10 minutes later, I put another batch. So I'm going to let that sit overnight. That'll seal it up. And it doesn't get that hot over here. That JB Weld's good for up to like 400 degrees. Anyways, not trying to go too fast here. I've used these stock ones. They're not that great, but for 25 bucks, you can't go wrong on that. The only difficulty is making yourself an intake manifold. And I'll tell you, it's on other older Briggs & Stratton motors, they have a plastic or phenolic, whatever that material is, composite that goes from the head to the carburetor, and it's about 6 inches of distance, actual distance. And I've tried to use those before, and the vibrating on these things, I always get failure right there, and it starts running really bad when it's leaking vacuum and leave you stranded somewhere. So basically, this has a rubber mounted. I'm going to improve on this. This is just right now to see how this is going to run on this. It's real clean. Like I said, I port matched the manifold to the head. And I started it up a minute ago, well, yesterday, with just some starting fluid. Just for a brief minute. It's really a quiet motor. On the other bikes that I've done, this is my 4th one. I've started with used motors that ran okay, but it's dirty, it's greasy, and I was making a mess downstairs. And so starting brand new, it's going to be real different. I'll keep it nice and clean. Run through the self-service car wash sometimes and spray that fucker off. What else is I got? Oh yeah, a couple little soldering supplies, shrink boots, rosin core, and solder. What I did on this was there's a kill switch that goes on this cover right here on my motor here. I'll show it to you. It's actually a little key that goes on there. It's a red key that pops into this hole, and without the key it won't run. So basically I took that wire and I added on a second piece, shrink boot it and solder it and everything. This is going to run to the handlebar, so there's going to be 2 kill switches for it. No big deal. Kind of lost for things to say here, but it's pretty simple, straightforward. Oh, I'm going to have to make a homemade accelerator cable from motor that sits on the back that goes along the frame up to the handlebars. It needs to be about 6 feet, maybe a little more than that. And I take a couple lengths of used bicycle cable. If I can't get one from Amazon for a couple bucks, you unbraid the beginning of those cables like that, and very carefully weave together 2 ends. And if you keep it nice and tight and hold it with like a zip tie real tight, you can solder it and make a working cable. Just make sure it doesn't have any little fray pieces that'll hang up. And everywhere that you do solder on those cables, it needs to be on a straight run section of the cable, because you can't have that solder on a turn on a corner, because it stays pretty stiff. But when you're just working with pieces you got, that's kind of what I end up doing. But anyways, oh yeah, the stock carburetor and everything fit inside of, go like this, boom, up on there. It fits inside of the plastic shroud, and so I had to use a hole saw and line it up just right to get it. Basically, with the motor, you'll see it next time, it sits like that, and this carburetor just hangs out. So it's basically a cold air intake, a true correct cold air. It's going to grab all the air from the outside, and this is all closed up. But okay, that's about it. Sorry if I'm not making sense here, but Kind of tired.